Earlier this summer, I went on a 10-day tour of Greece. While I was there, I filmed a short documentary, which you're about to see, to catalog my experience and share what I learned. Life isn't always a race to some finish line. It's a journey, and maybe there's a destination, but maybe it's just about having a great time on that journey and doing things you want to do and making it work for yourself.
Perfect.
This is the fan boarding call for Air Canada Flight 504, service to Toronto.
When we got to Greece, I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. I had never been abroad before. We landed at something like 7 a.m. Greece time, which meant that the meager amount of sleep we got on the planes would have to sustain us for an entire day. We were exhausted. Bus rides turned into spontaneous nap sessions, and even non-coffee drinkers like myself were soon stopping in for a little espresso. We spent most of that first day exploring downtown Athens.
No McDonald's.
When we got back to the hotel, sleep came easy. We needed the rest because ahead of us were 10 days abroad. first stop on the cruise was Mykonos, but since we've already seen that, we'll cut straight to the next morning. When most Americans think of Greece, the first images that probably pop into your head are like the Parthenon, the Acropolis, ancient Greece. But it was interesting to see that it's still a country that is functioning, and like there are still people living there, and it was interesting, that synthesis of old and new that we don't have as much here in America, because the country's just not old enough to have ancient ruins. So, it was cool to see how those things could coexist, seeing history and culture sort of mesh. I think what I liked most about the trip was just getting exposure to something completely foreign. It broke down some barriers, you could say. It was just something totally new, and it's always nice to just have something totally new. It was just like, wow, this is Greece, this is somewhere else. That sort of hits you when you're there, because you're like, everything that I'm used to is not here. But, that's okay. It's, a new experience. We got a good opportunity to get a sense of Greek life, because we were left a lot of free time, like when we went, especially on the islands, but even when we were on the mainland, we were given usually each day at least a few hours to more or less wander and do as we pleased. So whenever we were on an island, we usually hiked somewhere that most other people didn't, just in an effort to, make the most of our time there. So something I haven't touched on a lot so far, but something that was happening a lot there, were just these interpersonal connections I was making with people that I, wouldn't normally. I was talking with a lot of people that I don't usually at school, but due to proximity and coincidence, we were all sort of put together, and just to hang out with those people. I remember specifically each night on the cruise, there was this disco thing that would go on. They wouldn't play necessarily disco music. It was just like a music dance floor type experience. So we got out there and did that a few times, and got to branch out a little bit. I think a travel abroad experience is a great way to put things into perspective. I'm about to be a senior in high school, so with college applications on top of school, on top of just being a teenager, there's a lot of opportunity for me to be caught up in the happenings of my own life. But going to Greece, or anywhere abroad for that matter, is a great way to remind yourself that there's a whole world spinning out there. There was this one day in particular that we visited the ruins of Delphi. Now, Delphi was this sort of communal meeting place among ancient Greek city-states. It was used as a sanctuary for the leaders of the time to come together and ask the gods about important political and militant issues. But it was also a place where people of different backgrounds could enjoy a concert, celebrate their individual and collective accomplishments, and even watch sporting events. And in Delphi, there was this temple called the Temple of Apollo, and above its entrance were written two slogans: "Know thyself" and "Nothing in excess." I found it interesting that a civilization that existed thousands of years ago could philosophize and recognize at least some of the keys to coexisting. It struck me that perhaps they weren't so different from ourselves, and perhaps there's still something to be learned from them. I opened this chapter with a quote from one of my favorite storytellers, Casey Neistat. "Experience does for the soul what education does for the mind." That sentiment is what stuck with me throughout and after this trip. Going to Greece gave me an opportunity to understand the bigger picture. I know this chapter is called The Destination, but it's the experiences, the moments you stop to take in a view, the personal connections you make, the comfort zones you leave behind, that really matter.